joining us. You know, I think I'll jump off first by talking about something that the chairman, Senator Ortiz Pino, talked about. You know, the governor yesterday said that she has provided the legislature with compromise positions, and in her words, the legislature is all about talking about compromise but has no interest in actually coming to the table, and nothing could be further from the truth. And I'm reminded about something that President Kennedy said, which is it's hard to compromise with somebody whose idea of compromise is getting everything that they want. The driver's license proposal and framework that was talked about by the administration this session is nothing more than the same proposal that has been put before the legislature for the last several years. And in committee, on Tuesday night, I believe, the days are beginning to run together. You know, I said that what concerns me is the debate about this issue continues to be about immigrants. It isn't about fraud. It isn't about public safety. And in the campaigns, the messages used politically against Democrats who were trying to come to the table was not about keeping licenses out of the hands of human traffickers or keeping licenses out of the hands of criminals, which is something we agree with. I would support a bill that would keep New Mexico licenses out of the hands of dangerous people. I think we all would. But this false notion of compromise that is being talked about as recently as last night is simply not a compromise. It's the same situation. And it's impossible to compromise when somebody's idea of compromise is simply getting everything that they want. So with that, you know, the tax discussion this session really has solely been about amendments to our corporate income tax and amending tax legislation that impacts New Mexico businesses. My family owns a small business. We employ people in the state of New Mexico, and we built that business from the ground up. My stepfather did not go to high school, so we know what it's like in my family to build business in the state of New Mexico. But at the same time that we're having important discussions about the tax structure and making it more competitive and fairer for New Mexico businesses, we also need to have a conversation, a serious conversation about poverty and income inequality in New Mexico. We are the poorest state in the country with one of the flattest income taxes in the United States. And we also have the highest level of income inequality in this country. And if you talk about a strong foundation for an economy and a strong foundation for a society and for a political system, you cannot sustain either of those two things when you have a society and a state that is so divided on economic lines, where you have an increasing number of people who have nothing and a small number of people who continue to consolidate wealth. That is not the American system. That is not the vision that was outlined for this country in the post-war era that really laid the foundation for decades of economic growth in this country. So my bill that I'm co-sponsoring with the chairman of House Taxation and Revenue, Edward Sandoval, would increase the state's working families tax credit. This would directly inject into low-income households additional resources that they can use for such luxuries as food and housing and healthcare and clothes for their kids. The original legislation was passed by the former Speaker of the House, the late Speaker of the House, Ben Lujan. The state's current tax credit is set at 10% of the federal earned income tax credit. Our bill would increase that to 15%. For the working families of my district, and those are folks who are living under the poverty level, so for a family of four, I believe that's something to the tune of under $30-some thousand a year. I don't have the actual statistics with me. But in my district alone, this bill would inject about $1 to $1.5 million into the low-income working families of my district. I think it's important to note this isn't welfare. This isn't a handout. This is a hand up to people who are working 40 hours a week and making just over minimum wage is what it comes out to. So I really would hope that in the last days of the session, as we continue to have a conversation about how we reform New Mexico's tax structure, that we realize that that conversation cannot solely be restricted to the corporate side of the ledger. We have serious and growing issues of poverty and income inequality that we must act to address. And I really invite the rest of my colleagues in the Senate and in the House, as well as the administration, to broaden our tax conversation as we enter the last 2 weeks of session. Thank you.
Then we'll ask Senator Daniel Ivey Soto